Hello, my name is Jessica, and I'm going to be speaking about the conflicts that are happening in Gaza City right now between Israel and Palestine. So, I have to give the proper context and the proper knowledge. I have to go back to the beginning when this was first started to be recorded. So, in 1947, the United Nations had adopted resolutions 181, um, also known as the 1947 partition plan. So that sought out to divide the British Mandate of Palestine into Arab and Jewish states. So then in 1948, May 14th, the state of Israel was created, which caused a spark which caused the spark of the first Arab-Israeli war. And then the following year, in 1949, Israel won the war with 750,000 Palestinians displaced. Their territory was divided into three parts, those being the State of Israel, West Bank of the Jordan River, and the Gaza Strip. Throughout the years, tensions between Israel, Egypt, Jordan, and Syria rose. So in 1956, the Suez Crisis and Israel's invasion of the Sinai Peninsula, Egypt, Jordan, and Syria signed a mutual defense pact in anticipation of possible mobilization of Israeli troops. So that means if Israeli troops invaded one of the three countries, they will form an alliance and support each other. In June of 1967, after a series of maneuvers from Egyptian President Abdel Gamal Nasser, Israel attacked Egyptian and Syrian air forces, which started a 6-day war. After the war ended, Israel gained control over the Sinai Peninsula and Gaza Strip from Egypt, as well as the West Bank and East Jerusalem from Jordan and Golan Heights from Syria. Factionalism among Palestinians flared up when Hamas won Palestinians' authorities a parliamentary election in 2006 that deposed the longtime political party Fatah, which was a Palestinian political party that is both nationalist and social democratic, and was founded in the late 50s by Yasser Arafat and Khalil al-Razir. This gave Hamas control over the Gaza Strip. Hamas is a political and militant movement that was inspired by the Palestinian Muslim Brotherhood. So, since Hamas took control of the Gaza Strip, the U.S. and the Union, as well as others, did not acknowledge their electoral victory because Hamas was considered, or has been considered, a terrorist organization by Western governments since the late 90s. So, following the control of Hamas, violence between Hamas and Fatah broke out between 2006 and 2011. In 2014, Fatah entered into a unity government with Hamas. And in the summer of 2014, clashes in Palestinian territories reigned a military confrontation between the Israeli military and Hamas. Hamas fired about 3,000 rockets towards Israel. Their skirmish ended in late August of 2014 with a ceasefire deal which was brokered by Egypt only after 73 Israelis and 2,251 Palestinians were killed. Now, do you see the drastic difference in the amount of people that were killed from both sides? Yeah, that's okay. In 2015, after a wave of violence between Israelis and Palestinians, Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas of Fatah announced that Palestine would not be under the territorial divisions that were created by the Oslo Accords. The Oslo Accords were a form of a peace treaty formed between Israelis and Palestinians, which was facilitated by the Bill Clinton administration during his presidency, but it failed shortly after his presidency ended. So, in March of 2018, Israeli troops killed 183 Palestinians and injured 6,000 others after Palestinians went to the perimeter fence that is between Gaza Strip and Israel and threw rocks during a peaceful demonstration. Now, killing almost 200 Palestinians over throwing rocks is a bit extreme, I think. Like, yeah. So, Hamas, in response, Hamas militants fired over 100 rockets into Israel. Israel responded with strikes on more than 50 targets in Gaza throughout a 24-hour flare-up between the two, between Hamas and Israel. So now we're getting a bit closer. This was in early May of 2021. After a court ruled in favor of the eviction of several Palestinian families from the east of Jerusalem properties, causing protests to start, Israeli police had employed force against demonstrators. After several consecutive days of violence, Hamas and other Palestinian militant groups launched hundreds of rockets into Israel territory. Israel responded with artillery bombardments and airstrikes, which killed more than 20 Palestinians. They hit both military, non-military infrastructure, residential buildings, media headquarters, and refugee and healthcare facilities. 11 days later, Israel and Hamas had agreed to a ceasefire, both sides claiming victory. The fighting had killed more than 250 Palestinians and at least 13 Israelis, injured 2,000 others, and displaced 72,000 Palestinians. So this year, on October 7th of 2023, a quote-unquote war broke out between Israel and Hamas. Hamas fighters had fired rockets into Israel and stormed southern Israeli cities and towns across the border of Gaza. They had killed more than 1,300 Israelis, injuring 3,300 and taking hundreds of hostages. Since then, both sides, and I think mainly Israel, have traded daily rocket fire. Israel had ordered more than 1 million Palestinian civilians in northern Gaza to evacuate before a ground invasion that began on October 28th. Israeli forces have surrounded Gaza City, cutting them off from the southern part of Gaza and squeezing Hamas in with them. Hundreds of thousands of civilians still remain in the city as I speak. Health officials of Gaza say that the quote-unquote war has killed over 10,000 Palestinians, and more than 4,000 of those were children. Gaza City is now incredibly low in water, fuel, and supplies because Israel has rejected any humanitarian pauses and have been limiting the amount of aid that can enter the city. Negotiations have resulted in only 1,100 people being able to exit Gaza through the Rafah border, crossing to Egypt. Another 1.5 million displaced Gazans, which is over 70% of the population of the entirety of Gaza City, have no place to go and have to face the increasingly dire living conditions and security risks. So that's basically from like start to finish. Some of the consequences of this is that this conflict between Israel and Gaza is impacting the regional relations with the nations surrounding the Gaza Strip and Israel. displacement of millions more Palestinians present a dilemma for Egypt and Jordan, because they have already taken hundreds of thousands of Palestinians in the past, but they have resisted in taking anyone during this time. That's because Egypt and Jordan fear that Gazans, which of many were already displaced from somewhere else in Israel, will not be able to return once they leave Gaza. Egypt also fears that Hamas fighters could enter Egypt and trigger a new war in the Sinai by launching attacks on Israel or destabilizing the author- the authoritarian regime of Abdel Fattah el-Sisi by supporting the Muslim Brotherhood. Some additional info. As of December 17th, 2023, Israel has killed and martyred over 25,612 Palestinians, 10,091 of those being children, 5,390 of them being women, and 23,900 civilians. There have been over 52,031 people who have been injured in these attacks. 83 journalists have been killed. 473 targeted health staff. 222 of them being now dead, and 251 of them being injured. And now 1,850,000 Palestinians have been displaced since October 7th. No, that's just people. So obviously, because of the amount of airstrikes that Israel has put Gaza through, which has been over about 22,000 within the span of 2 months. So 63,400 units have been completely destroyed, and 173,000 units have been damaged. 147 destroyed and damaged press headquarters, 291 damaged schools, 1,441 damaged industrial facilities, 154 damaged mosques, and 4 damaged churches, and 126 targeted health facilities, which includes 23 hospitals, 56 clinics, and 46 ambulances. Now, you may notice that in official sites, where they are recording the deaths of Palestinians in Gaza, is lower than 25,000, but this is including the people who were presumed dead, whose bodies are still underneath all the rubble from the buildings around them. So I believe it is safe to say that it is well over 20,000 people that have been killed. So my thoughts on this is that Israel has taken some of the smallest excuses to attack Palestine at full force. An example of this is when I mentioned earlier, from March 2018, when 183 Palestinians were killed and 6,000 others were injured by Israel for throwing rocks at a peaceful demonstration from the fence dividing the Gaza Strip from Israel. At this point, if you really look into it, Israel is performing an ethnic cleansing. It is so obvious that they're doing this because of the way they're holding Palestinians hostage and the way they're treating them and the way they have been treating them for decades now. And just looking at the way they're killing them, they're not allowing them to leave. They're not allowing them to get help from other countries. And they're not allowing them, they're cutting off their electricity for multiple days at a time. They're cutting off their water supply. So most all of Gaza is incredibly low in water. It's just sad. Like, do they really deserve this? There are Israeli snipers who are shooting Palestinians who get a certain distance from the border to prevent them from leaving, to prevent them from getting aid from anyone. They're also shooting anyone who goes near the person's body to prevent them from helping one another. So if they shoot someone, no one can help them. They literally have to stay there, like bleeding out, because if anyone else goes near them, there's a high chance that they're gonna die. So yeah, there's also videos, or people have the hostages that Hamas had taken from Israel, who have been released during their 1 week ceasefire, I believe in sometime in November. They have said that they were treated well while they were being held by Hamas. They were being fed well. They were not being like harsh with them. They were being kind. It's one a mother, an Israeli mother had thanked the Hamas soldiers for not making this event traumatic for her daughter. There's a video of an Israeli woman entering a car to go back to Israel, saying goodbye to a Hamas soldier. And in her voice, you can hear sadness, and he also says goodbye to her, and there is sadness between their voices. Like, they're sad to like let to leave, that they're sad to leave. But if you look at the hostages that have been held by Israel, the Palestinian hostages that have been held by Israel, they come back with missing fingers. Multiple people have come back with missing fingers because of the Israeli soldiers. Israeli soldiers have literally enslaved, imprisoned innocent Palestinian civilians, men and boys. They are stripping them down from their clothes, forcing them to walk barefoot on the streets of Gaza, which is the floor. It's mostly rubble. It's all rocks and debris from the buildings that had been falling around them. The Israeli soldiers have literally been torturing them and killing them off slowly, one by one. It's like they don't know who's gonna die next. They don't know if they're gonna make it. It's gotten to the point where multiple journalists that have been sharing the things that have been happening in Gaza have literally made posts on social media saying their goodbyes. They are accepting the fact that they are not going to live. They are accepting the fact that they are going to die in Gaza. That they are going to be killed by Israeli airstrikes or Israeli soldiers. And it's so sad to see, because they're people. They are being treated like animals by Israeli soldiers. And it's like, it's insane to see that so many children and so many young children are being killed for selfishness, basically. Like, when is this going to end? When is Israel going to say, all right, that's enough? When will they realize that this is wrong? When will any of these governments that is siding by Israel realize that what they are supporting is wrong? Like, seeing the American government support Israel, it's it it makes me ashamed to think that I live in America, because it is so obvious what is right and what is wrong in this whole thing. Like, me, a 17-year-old who is not the legal age to vote, can realize what is wrong in the situation. It's sad that grown people who have higher status than what I do don't realize this. Some possible resolutions that I believe could, some possible resolutions is to call for a ceasefire. Not a 7-day one, not one that lasts a couple years, a permanent one. Because it's genuinely getting out of hand for these innocent children, these innocent people that are being killed daily. Like, these journalists are posting pictures of moments before airstrikes, moments after airstrikes, and what these children have to go through. Like, it's so sad because so many children have lost their parents, have lost family members, friends, neighbors. Like, even like everyone has lost at least one person in Gaza right now. And it doesn't just affect Palestine, it affects everyone, because there are literally people in my town, there are people who are my friends that this is affecting. And it's hard to see because they can't do anything about it. They can't travel over to Gaza because they are going to risk their lives and getting killed. And it's hard. It's a lot. Yeah.